Okay, I'm sitting here today with Robby, who's one of our photography and videography tutors from Three Little Wishes. Hello.
Hi Debbie, how's it going?
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine. Thank you for coming here.
Oh, pleasure. Yeah.
Just really to give our students and anybody else who's looking at joining us an idea about our tutors at Three Little Wishes. Obviously your talents are photography, but as well as videography. So can you tell me a bit about this creative side of you? Because I know you've got lots and lots of projects on the go.
Well, that's very, very kind, Debbie. I mainly started out in sort of the film industry. I had wanted to make films since I was a kid, and sort of straight out of high school I went in and started working in kind of the camera department, just sort of odd jobs. And throughout kind of the years I found a footing in that I really enjoyed grip. Grip is anything related to just making the camera move, so whether that's steady cams, gimbals or dollies. And after I sort of did a bit of time with grip, I started doing some of the behind the scenes photography for some projects, and I didn't have any money to like buy a digital camera, so I started with the celluloid film camera. And that was kind of my entry point, I guess, into photography specifically. Oh,
how cool. So you did the whole dark room thing?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of got, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's those things you use to a sous vide machine. So I created like a makeshift dark room with a sous vide machine because all the chemicals had to be at a certain temperature. So you put it in there, wait maybe about 20 minutes, and they would all stay at a certain temperature, and that was how I would learn to develop photography. And it was interesting because you could then get into push and pull. It's a bit like Lightroom when you can add exposures, pull stops down. So it was a very manual process when I started with photography. So whenever I stepped into digital photography, I felt quite safe. You know, there was a lot less sort of room for error. But I think having the sort of the lack of margin with film teaches you to really choose your composition, choose your shots, and really try and nail your exposure as much as possible.
And much cheaper, of course, with digital as well.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, you know, like with film is you pick your battles. You can't just sort of spray and pray, you know. You've got to be quite precise. And I think it's funny because recently it's had a bit of like a resurgence. So all these shops.
Oh, I think
films.
Definitely through COVID as well, people were sort of buying up film cameras because they were so cheap, weren't they?
Yeah. I mean, you could get a body for like $90, something like that.
Wow. But you know, there was something really fun about going to the, I don't know, in England we used to go to the chemist to pick up our exposures. Opening up the packet.
It was like Christmas.
It
was. You know, you never knew what you were going to get, and I'm not sure if it was the case for you, but for me, out of the 36 exposures, about 30 were crap.
Yeah,
you know, and
totally.
then that would kind of be, and it's funny because the ratios are sort of similar with digital as well. You know, you take a whole load of photos and then you just sort of cherry pick the ones that really work. You know?
So with your videography side of things, would you say you actually prefer that to the photography, or because it allows you to be the creative movie maker that you...
I think they both have their own sort of like appeal to me, because photography, there's a lot less investment. You know, there's a lot less manpower and there's a lot less sort of resources that are committed to it. Well, videography, you know, you have to sort of assemble a bit of a team. You have to have a very good idea so that, you know, when you're actually shooting it, you don't feel creatively like you're leading people down a hill. Whereas with photography, I feel like there is a lot more margin to experiment, because there's a lot less, you know, manpower and resources that are committed to it. So they each have their own appeal to me, but I would say fundamentally, like, I am making films more than I am taking photographs.
From a teaching perspective, how easy is it to teach videography? Oof. It's a lot more complicated, I imagine.
I think so, because there's a lot more variables. You know, I think a lot of the fundamentals of photography apply to video, like exposure and composition. But there's also the aspect of movement. Like, you know, with photography, everything's static in the sense that it's a still photo. with video, you have to sort of teach people, you know, how does movement factor into the audience perception, you know, like when you're shooting, for example, like a house, you know, you don't really want to just kind of move on one axis most of the time, you know, you want to create a bit of a parallax. So when people begin to understand that movement is sort of the determining factor, the thing that's separate to photo, to me, that's the thing that I think people struggle to sort of incorporate the most, because naturally they want to just pick up a camera and run around with it, you know, and there are certain guides, there's certain sort of rules, I guess, you have to adhere to when you do move the camera. And a lot of that I picked up in grip, you know, so it's like always try and incorporate two axes of movements. Always go straight and then turn, you know, and that creates that parallax effect. And I think that's the thing that people find really hard with video is moving the camera.
So if we had somebody out there who just wanted to learn the video functions of their camera, is that a fairly easy thing to teach in a day? I think the sort of principles behind it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big thing from photography and video is that you need to sort of teach people how motion blur works, which is all related to shutter speed. And, you know, for example, if you're out taking a photo, you can crank your shutter speed all the way up to 8,000, and it doesn't really have too much of a bearing in terms of, you know, it freezes action and it controls light. But with video, it's a bit more of a complicated affair, which is if you go beyond a certain point, your image starts to feel different, and that's because motion's captured differently. So teaching the 180-degree shutter rule, I think, is something that, you know, is the first point of call if someone's coming from photo to video. That's something you would cover. And then really frame rate, which is, you know, shooting slow motion. How does 60 FPS feel versus 24 FPS? And once they have those down, then it comes into movement. I think so. But a lot of the times people will, you know, this is a cool video, how do I do this, you know? And then I think it's a good starting point because you start to learn their tastes. And I always think it's important to teach toward an objective, you know, because people want to do certain things. And one thing I find that's actually quite helpful is to assist people in trying to imitate what they like. Because if they can do that, they will then continually do that and exhaust it. And once they've done that, they begin to develop their own sort of style, which is really what it's about. You know, I think video is about expressing yourself in a huge sort of canvas because you've got everything at your disposal. You've got music, you've got moving image, you've got...
Yeah, it's really quite exciting, really, isn't it? I mean, we brought out the workshop on iPhone videography, which obviously has been really great for people wanting to do social media. And what, in a day you can pretty much pick up everything you need to know
about video
on the iPhone.
Yeah, well, the iPhone's pretty powerful these days, you know, and it's much different than it was from when, you know, I started out in the film industry, which is you had cameras this big and you couldn't sort of put them on gimbals because they were, you know, 12, 13 kgs. And now with iPhones, you only need to master a few settings because the layouts are simple. You know, you just need to do frame rate and a little bit of exposure. But yeah, within one day, you could be shooting things that, you know, you would consider good.
It's great because if you've got a small business and you're wanting to put content onto your Instagram or your Facebook, it's immediate, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
And the great thing with iPhones is they have the ability to upgrade them, so you can actually get additional lenses and gimbals, and it's quite low cost. So starting with the fundamentals and then developing out as a small business, you know, it's quite a powerful tool, a phone, and everyone's got one.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
With the real estate side of photography, how easy is it to teach people? Because obviously it's quite an involved...
Yeah, I think the thing that you can't really teach is the circumstantial thing. Like if you get into a property and the beds aren't done, you know, stuff like that. But in terms of the actual, you know, what kind of lens to use, how to compose a room, how to deal with really tight spaces, those are things I could teach within sort of 3 to 4 hours. Pretty easy. But I think the thing that every real estate photographer can attest to is that you're not always going to have an ideal situation to shoot in, you know? And I don't know if you can teach someone to be prepared for those things, but I think that's what experience gives you and kind of is what makes you kind of a great real estate photographer. I remember I was shooting this house once, and the pool lights were busted, right? And I was standing there and I'm like, you know, the house looks beautiful, you know, we've got a nice sky, but the pool was dead. So I sort of went to the agent. I was like, are they going to fix these lights? You know, are they going to do it? And they're like, yeah, they're going to do it next week. But I'm on set already, you know, like I can't wait. I'll come back. So what I said was, I'm going to get a torch, I'm put in a lunchbox, and I'm going to spin it as it sinks. And what it did is it created this light pattern that lit up the whole pool, and then we stitched those images together, and that's what it looked like, you know. So things like that, when you're in real estate, you know, no one teaches you that, but you have to kind of be prepared for that.
I take it though that the agent went back and made sure that the lights were in place.
Yeah.
So there was no misrepresentation.
There was no misrepresentation, you know, but I was kind of like, you know, I had the raw file, so I was like, you know, until they get it fixed, you know, you shouldn't send this to them. But stuff like that, you know, you think a little bit outside the box. And another example was we were shooting the front of the same property, and we ran out of light because we're doing a twilight shoot. So what we did is we did a very long exposure of the sky, so that the sky was this nice pink.
Cool.
And then we got a drone and we flew it over the roof. And we pretty much stitched those images together so it looked like there was a moonlight hitting the roof, and we had that nice pink sky. So doing a little bit of extra, you know, I think can help really set you apart. But there's a part of you that has to have fun with that.
What do you enjoy about teaching? That very thing.
Yeah, I think it's seeing people get excited about what's in their head. You know, they come to you a lot of the times in the morning, like, look at this image, this is amazing, how do I do that? And then you spend maybe a few hours showing them how to do it, and then they're like, oh, that was quite straightforward. And then they'll think of something else, and then you just sit with them and you follow their curiosity and where they want to go. And I think that, for me, is the most kind of inspiring thing for me, or the thing that I enjoy the most about teaching, is seeing people actually find the tools to enable what's in their minds.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Oh, I mean, it's hugely rewarding.
Yeah. And
seeing that worried face in the morning, suddenly the light clicks on and they leave with a smiley face. I think it's just perfect, really.
Well, the thing that I really enjoy the most about with Three Little Wishes is doing the intensive weeks. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because a lot of the times, you know, you'll get a student at the beginning of the week and they are afraid of their camera. You know, they're like, I have no idea how these settings work. I don't really want to touch it. You know, they're always handing it to you like, can you change these settings? At the end of the week, they are completely independent, you know. And
so really, I mean, with the intensive, it's only 5 days, isn't it?
It's under a week, you know, and at the end of it, I would say most of the students I've worked with could be thrown into a commercial environment and would probably be able to swim.
So I imagine that the majority of people are wanting to do an intensive week because they're thinking, right, I really want to pursue a career in photography. I want to do it quickly. I don't want to forget anything that I've learned. So altogether in a 5-day course, it works quite well, really, doesn't it?
It's like a crash course, you know, and I think a big part of it is we cover everything. You know, we cover everything you need to know, from if you're a beginner, intermediate, or a little bit more advanced, all the way through night photography, landscape photography, flash photography. And I think having all those disciplines, you know, even if it's not completely within your interests, assists you in becoming a more well-rounded photographer. So totally that's what I really like, is being able to give all the tools possible to one person. I really like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
That's a pleasure.
No worries.
Nice to talk to you.
You too.